Hi, welcome. My name's Carrie Hill. I'm the Community Education Program Manager at Anew, Building Beyond Violence and Abuse. I am here to support your facilitator today. So I'll introduce Angela Davis. She's the community educator with us at Anew, and she's going to be presenting today domestic violence fundamentals for you. I will be monitoring the chat, so if you have a question, please go ahead and enter it into the chat, and I'll be sure that we get to it as soon as Angie can. Thanks very much, and go ahead. Thank you, Angie.
Awesome. So again, my name is Angela Davis. I am a community educator at the agency, in which I will explain in just a few seconds. I just do want to thank you all for allowing us to speak about domestic violence fundamentals. I just want to say, if you've heard of South Suburban Family Shelter, that is what our agency was formerly known as. But, we upgraded and rebranded to a new name. And of course, South Suburban Family Shelter, that name has been with us for 40 years. So something that is still dear and near to our hearts, but we have rebranded. So as my boss, Carrie, said, we are now Anew, Building Beyond Violence and Abuse. All right. So I want to go over some objectives with you today. So during this training, participants will be able to gain an overview of domestic violence definitions, relationship dynamics, impacts on adult survivors, myths and facts, and barriers to leaving. You will be able to learn some typical hallmarks of behavior of people experiencing abuse and people choosing to use violence with their partners. You will also be able to gain an overview of issues related to children's exposure to violence, including impacts for young children, risk and protective factors, and available support through Safe from the Start program at Anew. So our mission, even though our name has changed, our mission is still the same, okay? So the mission of Anew is to provide comprehensive, coordinated services to families in which domestic violence exists without imposing any one solution. So before I go forward, I would like to explain the last statement, without imposing one solution. So typically what that means is that our agency, our advocates, our counselors, everyone at the agency, we tend to use the empowerment approach. So essentially what that means is that if we have a client coming into our agency for services, and say we're doing a safety planning or whatever we are doing to help that victim or survivor, however they identify themselves, we do not like to make decisions for them, which we'll talk about later in the session. These individuals are experts over their own lives. So imagine you go to your friend for advice and he or she says, well, you need to do this and this and this. Okay, the end. Thanks. Right? So we don't want to do that, because we have to understand that this individual has had all the power and control of their own lives taken from them. So during our empowerment approach, we want to give that back to them. We want to let them know that they are resilient, they are able to make decisions for themselves, and that they can trust their own intuition. So I just wanted to explain that so that you can understand what exactly that statement means. And again, sometimes, I talk pretty fast when I'm nervous. So if you do have any questions, any concerns, any comments, feel free to write in the chat, or, just take yourself off mute. That is totally fine. So I now want to go over some of the programs that we do have at our agency. So we do have a 24-hour crisis hotline. Okay, and we do have bilingual advocates as well that is working this hotline. So I will put in the chat as well the crisis number, but I will also say it out loud for you as well. So our 24-hour hotline number is 708-335-3028. And again, I will make sure to put that in the chat for you all as well. Okay, so again, we do have a 24-hour crisis hotline. We also have emergency shelter, and just as it says emergency, that is exactly what it is. It is emergency shelter. Now, of course, our relationships are different. Our family situations and dynamics are different. we had individuals stay at emergency shelter before for a week, maybe two, but that's not really typical at our agency. So during that time of emergency shelter, we are trying to safety plan with them to find somewhere to house them that is safe during that time. Okay. So we also have transitional housing and rapid rehousing. This is such a great program. We call this department sanctuary, right? And typically we have some contracts with some confidential apartment complexes around the suburbs. And this really helps the children and the families, the women at our agency. We also have counseling. Counseling is free of charge, okay? It is free. It is free. And I just keep saying that because I know that can sometimes be a worry for someone who is trying to find resources, especially ones that they can afford to be able to get help. So it is free. And we also have bilingual advocates for this as well. So we have some other programs that I would like to go over. Say from the start, also we will be talking about, so I won't get into that too much. Legal advocacy. So we work out of the Markham Courthouse, and typically this is where an individual will obtain their orders of protection. Kind of similar to a restraining order, but orders of protection is for someone who is in a intimate relationship that is abusive, okay? We have community advocacy, okay? And this originally was described as our medical program. So we work out of hospitals. We typically have a long-lasting relationship with Advocate Hospital. So our advocates has been really working hard because during the pandemic, there was a lot of shifts and changes with our advocates being able to be present in the community. So we are really in the process of getting them back up and running into the hospitals. We have the Partner Abuse Intervention Program. Now this does cost, okay? Let me explain why, right? So this is for our abusers or our perpetrators. And of course, with every decision you make, there is a consequence. So typically this is court mandated. So either you take our classes or you go to jail, right? So typically what tends to happen is that we have these perpetrators call our agency, and they find out that our agency has the longest program for the Partner Abuse Intervention Program. We are 30 weeks long, right? So of course, other agencies are not that long. In my opinion, 30 weeks is not long enough, because if you've been having the same mindset, behaviors, morals, and values for say 20, 30 years, what is 30 weeks, right? So this is something ongoing that you will really have to change about yourself. But anywho, so we are 30 weeks. So typically the perpetrators say, oh, okay, call you back. And then we end up hearing from them again because they call other agencies and find out we are the cheapest, right? So we typically accept anyone into this program, whether it's man, female, however you identify yourself. We typically accept everyone. Now, the only time that a perpetrator may not be accepted is that when you cannot take accountability for the actions that you've done. So say if, I'm the perpetrator and I'm telling Carrie, nope, I didn't do it. I didn't hit him. That wasn't me. Carrie will probably tell me, oh, okay, well, have a nice day. And when you're ready to take accountability, we will talk again. Okay, so this is our Partner Abuse Intervention Program, and it's really awesome. We also have bilingual advocates for that program as well. And then we have the community education department, right? So I am a community educator, and we have a team of 3 other people, with Carrie being our boss. So the community education program is really great. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the team, but we really do the prevention, right? The outreach. Okay, so we give presentations to schools, churches, different agencies like yourself, anyone that is willing to hear about our topics. So some of these topics include hands are not for hitting, pre-K through second grade. Yes, it's a very important topic to talk about, to where we're talking about feelings, right? It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. But when you're angry, do you hit someone? No, right? We teach them hands are not for hitting. What are some helpful ways to use your hands, right? So then third through fifth grade, we take it a step further. We talk about family violence and essentially what is family violence? What does that look like? What are the different types of abuse? But most importantly, with family violence, we focus on safety planning, right? So what should you do or what should you not do if you are in a household where there is violence, okay? Then we have sixth grade through high school, right? So we're taking another step further. Now we're getting into what is teen dating violence? What does that look like? What is a healthy relationship? What is an unhealthy relationship? What is consent, right? So these are the different things that we're talking about, because truth be told, teens and adolescents are dating younger and younger, right? And we're seeing a lot of abuse happen in the school system. So those are our main different topics. We also give domestic violence foundations presentations, as I'm doing right now, to college students and different agencies. Also, I know there's more. We offer a BRO program. The BRO program stands for Boys Respecting Others. Okay, so this is a 8-week session for 5th through 8th grade young men who have experienced some type of violence in the household or in the community. And during these 8 weeks, we talk a lot about accountability, trustworthiness, respecting the home and community, different things of that nature. So it is 8 weeks, which means it's about 8 different topics, okay? So that's pretty cool. And our young men, they like us after a while. You know, it takes probably like 2-3 weeks, but they love us after a while. So if you would like to know more about the community education program, what we do, I really encourage you to go on Facebook, follow our Facebook page, Anew, Building Beyond Violence and Abuse, okay? And check out our videos. What's the Tea, okay? We do What's the Tea every single Tuesday at 1 p.m. And this really puts our agency on a platform to talk about different topics with not only our agency, but we partner with other agencies to speak about domestic violence. And we talk about gender norms and being in the man box, right? I don't want to give too much away. I encourage you to go on Facebook. There's some really good episodes on there. So that's a little bit about what we do. And then we have our development and communications department. They're awesome. And they cover a lot of our marketing and donations and things of that nature. So these are some of our programs. And again, we will also put in the chat if you're interested in going on our website, getting a little bit more information about what we do. It is anewdv.org. And again, that will be in the chat for you all as well. So I really encourage you all to visit our Facebook page and visit our website to get more information and, you know, a little bit more familiarity, if that's a word, about us, okay? All right, so let's get into good stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the definition of domestic violence, okay? So the definition that we have, that we use, is domestic violence is the deliberate pattern of abusive behaviors used by one person to maintain power and control over another within the context of a household, intimate partner, or familial relationship. Domestic violence includes physical, psychological, sexual, spiritual, and financial abuse, threats, intimidation, harassment, isolation, manipulation, and or coercion, okay? And don't worry, we will get in some of those we would get in some, break down a lot of those types of abuse, okay? And as you can see, we have some words that are bolded because those are really important within this definition. So we have pattern, abusive, right? So it's a pattern, it's abusive. The two main things that an abuser wants out of that relationship is all the power and all the control, right? So no, I won't put you all on blast or make you, take yourself off mute unless you want to, but just start thinking to yourself, what does it mean for someone to have all the power and all the control over you in a relationship? What might that look like? How might that person feel, right? Try to have some empathy to put yourself in their shoes, to imagine how one might feel if you are not able to make any decisions for yourself, or what goes deeper into the power and control aspect of an abusive relationship, okay? All right. Hold on, I just want to make sure I'm not skipping anything. All right. Nope, didn't. So let's talk about the cycle of violence, okay? Now, as I've said before, our relationships look different. My relationship might not look the same as yours. Yours might not look the same as another person, especially if these two individuals, or one individual, should I say, is in an abusive relationship, okay? So in every abusive relationship, there is a cycle of violence, okay? So I want you all to, take some time to look over some of these examples as I'm explaining the cycle of violence, okay? So there are 3 stages in the cycle. The first stage is the tension building stage, okay? And this is typically where the abuser is getting upset, frustrated, right? 9 times out of 10, it has nothing to do with the victim, right? But if I'm the abuser, who am I going to take my anger out on, right? So let me use an example. If I'm the abuser, maybe I'm having a bad day because I got in trouble at work with my boss. Maybe I'm mad and I'm frustrated because I got pulled over by the police on my way home. Maybe I'm mad and frustrated because I called my partner and he or she is not answering the phone, and they know better not to answer my phone call, right? So I'm getting frustrated, I'm getting agitated, I'm mad, right? So if I'm getting mad, ask yourself, how might the victim be feeling at this point? Scared, right? Walking on eggshells, being very cautious about what they say and what they do, because my abuser is getting upset. I know what they're capable of, right? So when I talk to the students, I always say, think of a balloon, right? Think of a balloon and you're constantly blowing air into a balloon and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. What's going to happen, right? It's going to pop. That's when we go into our second stage. We call it the acute or the explosion stage. This is typically when the abuse happens. Now, I want you all, now I'm picking on you. I really am. So now I want you to take the time and I want you all to tell me, out of these 4 types of abuses that I named, which type of abuse do you think happens first in the explosion stage? Do you think it's physical abuse? Do you think it's verbal and emotional abuse? Do you think it's sexual abuse? Or would it be property abuse? Which type of abuse typically happens first in the explosion stage? Physical, verbal, emotional, sexual, or property abuse? And you keep to take yourself off mute or write it in there, however you, and thank you all for writing in here. I was sitting here like, are you all listening?
I was going to say, I put it in the chat. I was thinking maybe verbal or property, maybe throwing something up against the wall to kind of allude of the next steps in regards to the violence. I was thinking maybe verbal or property.
Carrie, was you going to say anything
I
before I
was
go?
just going to share the comments in the chat. In addition to what Ladwina just shared, you're getting a lot of comments with folks identifying verbal property. Most folks are saying verbal. We have somebody referencing emotional abuse.
Well, y'all smart. I know you're taking training, but y'all know some stuff, right? So typically verbal and emotional abuse typically happens first. Absolutely. And I always explain, think of how fights happen in school, right? Somebody says something that you don't like, and now you want to fight, right? So I try to use that as an example. But yes, typically that verbal and emotional abuse happens first. But again, our relationships are different. So maybe it is sexual abuse that happens first. Maybe it is property abuse, right? To shake you up a little bit, to intimidate you, right? So now I want you all to think, we talked about the tension building stage where Angie's irritated and she's upset and mad. Now we're in the explosion stage where I probably curse you out, call you names, right? So if I'm the abuser, typically what's next is I will say, I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. I was just upset. I told you I got pulled over by the police, right? I was just frustrated. You didn't answer the phone. Every time that I call you, you're supposed to answer that phone. So what was you doing, right? We call this stage the honeymoon stage. No, this is not the honeymoon when you get married and, go on a nice vacation and stuff. We typically call this the false honeymoon because it's a cycle, right? We talked about this being the cycle of violence. So if something is a cycle, it's bound to repeat, right? Which brings me back to the definition. That word pattern was bolded because it's a pattern of abusive behaviors. Right? So you see, even when I said, I'm sorry, you knew I was frustrated because you didn't answer the phone. What were you doing? Typically, that's going to lead the abuser back in the tension building stage because now I'm getting frustrated again. Right? But to focus on the honeymoon stage, as you can see, a lot of things they say is, I'll never do it again. I'm sorry. I was just having a bad day. You know how that goes. Maybe if I did conduct property abuse and broke your phone, don't worry. I got you the newest iPhone, is much better than your other one. Let's go on a date. Maybe I do take you out on vacation, right? Because I don't want you to leave me because as an abuser, if you leave, I lose all of my power and control. And I don't want that to happen, right? So now I just want you all to take a moment and just think about this. This can be one of your clients. This could be a family member. This could be a friend. Maybe you know someone close to you that's been through this situation. On average, it takes a victim about 7 times to go through this cycle of violence before they try to leave. And remember, I said on average. So yeah, it may take one person only once to go through it. May take another person 4 times, maybe 5, right? But on average, it takes a person 7 times. So just imagine, that first cycle may have been verbal and emotional abuse. But what if the next 3 times are sexual abuse or physical abuse or sexual and physical abuse at the same time? And how detrimental and scary that can be for someone, which we'll get into the barriers of leaving. Okay, so that is the cycle. So we have some types of abuse and tactics that I would like to go over. I know that physical abuse is typically the main type of abuse that we hear of when we think about domestic violence. You instantly think about the physical, right? But there's that psychological aspect, right? The mental and emotional abuse. And honestly, that could be way worse than physical abuse. I remember my coworker saying that someone with a broken arm came up to him after a presentation. And she told him, she said, I'm not worried about my broken arm. That can heal, bones heal. But I'm more so worried and scared, and it's going to take me time to get over all the verbal and emotional abuse that I was put through. Bruises heal, words stick with you longer. So just imagine being told by someone that you love over and over and over that you're dumb, you're stupid, you can't do anything without me. Nobody else wants you. Your friends don't care about you. They don't even know that you're in an abusive relationship. Nobody pays attention to you because you're worthless, right? So imagine keep getting told that over and over. You're bound to believe it. And not only someone with low self-esteem gets into an abusive relationship. You can have high self-esteem or feel that you have high self-esteem, get into this relationship and be broken down so much that now you do have low self-esteem or just no self-esteem at all. And then we're going to talk about sexual abuse, right? Sexual abuse, when we think about this, we think of, sexual abuse, rape, right? But also this can be the abuser exposing their partner to STIs, right? Keeping the partner pregnant or preventing them from being pregnant. Prostituting their partner. Controlling or denying access to healthcare. So also too, let's just think about this. During the pandemic, imagine living at home with your partner, your abusive partner. Imagine you being pregnant and he or she is not allowing you to go get any prenatal care just because they said so. Right? Imagine if your partner did expose you to an STI and said you can't go to the doctor to get that checked out or taken care of. Deal with it. Right? So also with sexual abuse, I tend to talk to the students a lot because, the teenagers, they don't really comprehend the fact that just because I'm married to you or you married to me, that I can still tell you no to sex. They can't really comprehend that. So just imagine that being a factor. I'll give the example that I have someone that I know right now that can't understand that they're in a relationship, but they're being sexually abused. And she can't grasp that aspect because this is my boyfriend. Ma'am, you're being sexually abused. Right? So imagine if this is your husband or your wife or whomever. Okay? Then let's talk about the spiritual part. How that might be. Right? So maybe your partner is manipulating your faith beliefs. Maybe they're using texts such as scriptures to control you into doing what they want you to do. Right? Imagine if I'm very, very religious and my religion do not believe in divorce. And I'm telling my loved ones or I'm telling my priest that I'm being abused. And they say, okay, well, Carrie, go back home. Figure it out. Do your wifely duties. How might that affect someone, right? And then we have financial abuse. Maybe you see this within clients or you've heard of this before, of financial abuse being an aspect in this, right? And which we will get into as far as the barriers of leaving. But imagine if I'm working, but I'm seeing none of my paychecks, or maybe I'm not working because I'm not allowed to. But then I'm trying to leave an abusive relationship. What means do I have to take care of myself? Right? So then we have threats, intimidation. But isolation is very important and it's really a warning sign, honestly. Because this is typically what the abuser thrives off of, is to isolate you from friends, family, your hobbies, right? Why are you going to work? Stay home with me. They're not going to fire you. You're not even needed at work. They don't care if you come. Or why are you going to church? You just went last Sunday. What else are they talking about? Why are you going to see grandma? You can FaceTime her. Why are you going out with your friends, right? Stay with me. Hang out with me. I thought you loved me. You're not spending any time with me, right? So typically they're being isolated. And of course, this turns into, right? I know a lot of times as women, we say, oh, she's acting funny. I haven't talked to her. I don't know what's wrong with her. So this can really, really play a role as a warning sign, especially. Then we have manipulation and we have coercion. Okay, so coercion is basically threats to make the partner do something that they don't want to do, such as you better go drop your order of protection, right? Making you do things that you just do not want to do. So these are some of the abuse and tactics that you may see in these relationships. And again, if there's any questions or anything you have, please feel free to just stop me. So we talked about power and control in our definition. And okay, awesome. Thanks, Carrie. So we talked about power and control in our definition, right? So the power and control in an abusive relationship is the intentional and systematic use of threats, intimidation, coercion, or violence to instill fear and dominance over another person. And as you can see, it is intentional. So no, they are not sorry for it. Okay, and again, these are the two main things that a person wants out of that relationship. So this is the power and control wheel. And from my understanding, this wheel, and again, Carrie, if I'm missing anything, correct me, please. This wheel was created back in the day when some advocates was really trying to understand domestic violence and what it was and what it looked like, but they didn't really know how to put things in words, right? So they formed this group with some women who were abused. And as they're interviewing them and asking them questions, they're realizing that, wait a minute, all of these women are they're basically saying the same thing, maybe different scenarios, but they're basically saying the same things. And we see that the physical and the sexual is something that is very prominent in these abusive relationships. But then there's all these other things that you are seeing in these relationships, such as emotional abuse and, you know, using children, right? Because honestly, the abuser is probably the breadwinner. So 9 times out of 10, if you try to leave me, the batterer is twice more likely to gain sole custody of that kid. And if you are a mother or whomever, or, you know, these are your children, you might feel as though I'm not leaving. I'm just going to stay so I could be with my kids, because if I leave and my kids stay with this abuser, am I ever going to see them again? What's going to happen to my children? And I would rather be in a household to just see them and protect them than to not be with them, right? So these are just some of the typical things that you may see in a relationship. So I'll give you a little time just to kind of look over this, because I know it's a little bit of small writing and stuff. So I'm gonna just give you a few seconds, you know, to kind of look over this to gain understanding of the power and control wheel.
I'll just jump in real quick, Angie, to let you know, Ladwina, that we will send you a PDF of this so that you and your staff can print out if you want a more legible version. Sometimes it's a little difficult on folks' laptops. So we'll be sending the PDF of Angela's slides, as well as this power and control wheel and the cycle of violence graphics, so folks can have that for reference.
Thank you so much, Carrie, Angela. Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay, so there are, these are basically the relationships in which DV affects in the household, intimate, and familial. Okay, and so who is impacted by domestic violence, right? Domestic violence impacts people regardless of socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, education level, religion, gender, sex, age, ability, size, or sexual orientation, or any personal or cultural identity or characteristic. So maybe if, we try to explain this because maybe sometimes you think, oh, it only happens in this type of community, or, oh, it doesn't happen to me or to them because of their degree or how much money they make. Domestic violence has no boundaries. So again, it does not matter if you have a high school diploma or a college degree. It does not matter if you live in the suburbs or if you live, in a poor community. It does not matter, right? So even sometimes, maybe when we try to give these presentations here in different schools, say, oh, no. We don't need those presentations because that don't happen in my school. Well, sir or ma'am, I'm sure it's happening. You probably just don't know about it, or maybe hearing people, no, that don't happen in my family. We don't play that. And while you're saying that, it's probably a cousin or something sitting next to you being quiet because they've actually been through it, right? So you never know who might be going through this, regardless if they are vocal about it or not. You never know. Okay, so we're going to be talking about compounded risks. Okay, so especially when we're describing this slide, think of the clients that you may work with, right? Or the individuals you may run into. Okay, so consider how the history of and ongoing systems of oppression impact the experience of living with domestic violence. For example, people of color, people identifying as part of the LGBTQ plus population, people who are senior citizens, people who are unauthorized immigrants, people living with disabilities or with complex health issues, right? So when you're thinking about these different individuals that you may work with, right? Just imagine the questions that are typically running through their head or which may stop them from asking for help, wanting to speak out about their abuse, or even maybe trusting you. Yes, you may be a great person. However, they don't know that because they thought their partner was a great person too, right? So some of the questions they could be thinking about is, do they trust that they will be helped or even believe? Think about a lot of the victimization that's going on, right? Or maybe they fear of telling their stories again because when they did it before, they were not believed or they were victimized, right? Maybe they're thinking, is this even a safe place or a safe space to discuss this? Or they could be fearful that they will be reported to ICE, right? If they're an unauthorized immigrant. I remember being in a training before and this young lady talked about one of her clients. Her and her husband came to the US, but she didn't know that she was a citizen. Like she basically thought that she was still an unauthorized immigrant because that's what her partner kept holding against her, right? Okay, if you try to leave, I'm gonna call ICE on you. You don't have no papers. So where you going? What you gonna do? You can't even understand the language here. When really the whole time he had her immigration papers. That was a form of power and control. They can also fear, with me being unauthorized or experiencing all these different systems of oppression, will my children be taken from me? Can I even trust to talk to you without you holding certain aspects against me, right? So there's a lot of different risks and different dynamics that a person may go through that we're not even understanding why they tend to still be in this relationship or not asking for help. So these can be a lot of questions that you can ask yourself as you are coming in contact with some of your clients. So we're going to discuss some myths and realities because, of course, domestic violence has a lot of myths and realities, right? So one of the myths is domestic violence is caused by substance use, mental illness, and anger, the victim's actions, or relationship stress. When in reality, violence is a choice to, again, gain that power and maintain that control. And abuse is a learned behavior, right? So when we say, oh, you know, Angie, she has the mental illness, you know, that really plays a role in her actions, right? Abusers are very manipulative. So you let them hear you say that and, yep, see, Carrie, I told you it's my mental illness. I told you. You didn't want to believe me. I told you I was going to get help. You know, I'm not really like this. I just got to, you know, get on my medication, right? Or, yeah, you know, Angie just has an anger problem. Yeah, but if I get pulled over by the police, am I going to punch the police officer? If I get in trouble at work, am I going to beat my boss up? No, because, of course, right? That's a choice. And the choice that I'm choosing to do is wait till I get home and abuse my partner, because that's who I have the power and control over. That's the one who I can make listen to me. I can't make the police officer listen to me. That's why we like to say as well with our partner abuse intervention program, that is not an anger management class. That's two totally different things. Two totally different things that a lot of people really do get mixed up. Okay. And relationship stress, right? Let's talk about that, right? Because we are in a pandemic. We're still in a pandemic, right? So of course, when March 2021 first hit, right, there was a lot of stress. People losing out on jobs, people being sick, people, you know, passing away. There was a lot of different stress. Your kids at home, right? Now you got to deal with the kids being at home, right? So yes, there was a lot of stress. However, it's still a choice that you make, right? Because even dealing with my own stress, I'm not bopping my fiance upside the head, right? Violence is a choice, and abuse in relationships is a learned behavior. And I always say the first relationship that you see in the household is what you assume to be healthy, whether it's your uncle and aunt that's raising you, mom or dad, stepmom and dad, you know, whomever those guardians of you are, the first relationship you see in the household is how you assume to be. Which is why I had a second grader tell me before that he hit girls because his dad tells him to. So you growing up in that household and you're being told, yeah, hit girls, that's what you're supposed to do. You're in second grade and you think that's normal, right? Because we always get challenged. We come in and teach about domestic violence and they say, well, my dad or my mom told me this, right? So let's talk about the second myth. The victims must have done something, right, to cause the abuse. And they must be okay with it or they'll leave, right? Because of course, let's use our men, for example. If a man, and you know, that's really hard, right? But our men are victims too. So imagine a man coming out and saying, you know, I was abused by my partner. And the first thing somebody say is, well, what you do to get hit? You had to do something. You had to do something, right? In reality, nobody has the right to harm another person. Victim blaming puts the burden on the person who has been harmed instead of holding the person who committed the crime accountable for their own actions. So imagine, you know, a guy is finally getting that strength to come out and disclose that they're being abused. And that's the first reaction, the laughs, or what did you do to deserve it? I bet you he won't come out again and say anything else. Or imagine, the whole thing of everyone encouraging for women and men to come out and, put their sexual, their abusers out, finally speak your piece, the Me Too movement, right? And then the second that individuals are coming out to speak, now people don't believe you because it's your favorite celebrity, it's your favorite uncle, or it's your friend that you call a sister or a brother, right? The victim blaming. This is what we mean, okay? So these are some impacts on adult survivors. The sense of hopelessness and helplessness, right? That feeling of you just won't understand. You're not going to understand. You're not going to help me. You're going to judge me just like everybody else. Or maybe me just feeling hopeless because my abuser been telling me the whole time in our relationship that I was worthless. So maybe I am. So if I'm feeling worthless, what's the point of me asking for help? This is the situation I'm in. I guess everything happens for a reason, right? Numbness, the low self-esteem, the lack of sense of self, the denial, minimization, rationalization of seriousness of abuse, right? So this can even mean, oh, Carrie, you don't deserve that. You did not deserve that. And Carrie responds, well, I mean, he's right. I should have answered the phone when he called. I know that I'm supposed to answer the phone. So, I deserve that. I deserved it because I knew better, right? They're rationalizing their own abuse, right? Depression, anxiety, irritability, an unreasonable sense of blame. And this is what we really try to teach the young kids in these presentations, is that they are not to blame, because maybe they feel, well, I'm the reason why mom and dad are fighting. I should have did better on my grades. I should have cleaned up my room. I even should have helped cook, right? So it's probably my fault, right? So imagine a victim getting abused and, you should have known I was coming home from work early. Why wasn't dinner ready? And blaming themselves for that. Okay, so these are some impacts, again, on adult survivors. So we want to talk about children's exposure to violence, because if we had a counselor, or if you all are a counselor on here, children's exposure to violence is something really, really huge, and I know a lot of our counselors at the agency, talk about how when they're talking to parents, well, did little Johnny see anything, between the abuse? Oh, no, Johnny was asleep. He didn't hear anything. He was asleep. The door was closed. He didn't hear anything. And then when it's time to talk to little Johnny is like, oh, right, on this day at this time, yep, I seen mommy hit daddy, and then I seen daddy do this, right? He got a whole story, but leave it up to the parents. Little Johnny didn't see anything, right? So children's exposure to violence means being a victim of abuse, neglect, or maltreatment, or a witness to domestic violence or other violent crimes. Now, of course, this was probably in 2019, maybe 2020, maybe before that, but about 3.5 million children a year are exposed to domestic violence. And you all have to remember, 3.5 million, that's what was reported. Imagine the families or the children that can't even talk to report it. 3.5 million a year is a lot. And just imagine how, any statistic that we may see before probably skyrocketed during the pandemic alone. When children have to stay at home from school, what about the violence that they've seen at home, right? So children's exposure to violence can change a child forever. Children can suffer from exposure to violence via what they hear and what they see and what they know. And we all know that children, even if you're not a mom yourself or you work with children, you have nieces, you have nephews, you have friends with kids, whomever, or even just watching them little people on movies, they have a big imagination, right? So imagine if, little Johnny was in a room and, he's hearing mom and dad fighting and arguing, but they don't know. And, maybe somebody tripped into the wall, but it sounds so huge and so big. Little Johnny is in a room like, oh my goodness, something just happened in there, right? What fell? Did somebody throw something? Right? So their imagination is just, who knows what they are imagining that's happening in that room. Children exposed to violence may view violence as acceptable, right? Like the second grader who told me that he hit girls because his dad tells him to, right? So they see that as acceptable, especially for the parents that are still together due to whatever reason that victim or survivor is still there. But I mean, hey, mom and dad still together. They fight all the time. It happens, right? And of course, arguments and disagreements, those are normal. If you don't argue with your partner, I don't know what type of partner that you have, but that's awesome. But arguments and disagreements are normal, but abuse in relationships, that's not normal. And being in the school system and even just talking to kids, they really find that as a part of your relationship. Like that's the ups and downs that you go through. And children need consistent, reassuring care of adults. Okay, so maybe you're starting to think about some of the clients that you've seen and you know something is going on, but you can't really pinpoint really what's happening. Okay. So these are some of the definitions that you may hear me say or read or anything. So exposure to violence means being a victim of abuse, neglect, or maltreatment, or a witness to domestic violence or other violent crimes. Mental health, right? We hear that term a lot, right? It's the successful performance of mental functioning, resulting in productive relationships with others, and the ability to adapt, to change, and to successfully cope with adversity. Risk. Risk is the possibility of suffering harm or loss. And resiliency is the ability to recover rapidly from illness, change, or misfortune elastically. Wait, am I saying it right? Elasticity. Okay, don't judge me. I know y'all probably laughing on the other side of this screen. Don't judge me. Okay. So we are going to talk about some signs of exposure, right? Because maybe even with you working with your clients, right, you may see a change in little Johnny from when he used to be, and now you're seeing some things that's kind of off, right? But you're not pinpointing that it could be family violence or children's exposure to violence, okay? So you see, it spells out scared, right? That's, pretty cool. So S stands for sudden changes in sleep habits. C, crying or whining frequently, right? Maybe more than before. It's kind of like, little Johnny turned into a baby again, right? It could be afraid of things he or she never feared before. So maybe they were in sports or in extracurricular activities, and now they just fear being away from the victim or survivor. And they don't want to partake in anything else because they just want to be around mom or dad, whoever that person might be. Refusing activities they once enjoyed. Oh, I thought you liked playing basketball. No, I don't like that no more. I don't want to do it no more. Oh, you don't like to color? You always liked to color when you came into the session. No, I don't want to do that no more. Daddy don't like me coloring. I don't want to do that no more. Right? It could be anything. Being easily startled, right? So imagine if you're living in a household where there's, violence, you're easily startled. And then displaying disruptive behavior, becoming really aggressive, kind of imitating the things that they see in the household by the perpetrator. So we are going to be talking about some risk factors and protective factors that could play a role in children being exposed to violence. Okay, so there are three typical subjects of where risk factors can occur, and that's culturally, the community, and family. Okay, so our broader culture transmits messages of tolerance for violence, so distressed community dynamics. So let's think about this. If you are living in a community where you see violence everywhere, the community, in the household, on TV, your friends, everybody just deal with violence, right? Substance abuse issues going on, right? Health impairment or economic concerns, right? The lack of access to trained caregivers. So you're living in a community where there's not a lot of resources. I don't know about Anew building beyond violence and abuse because I never even heard of a domestic violence agency, or I never even heard of an agency that helps you when you aren't in these violent relationships. Or maybe if I have heard of Anew, we don't have a car to get there. I don't have any bus fare to get there, or cab fare, Uber. What is an Uber? I don't even have a smartphone to pull up Uber, right? That is foreign to me. I don't know what that is, right? So your community does not allow you to have a lot of protective factors, right? Which we'll talk about. And then let's talk about the family life. A lot of isolation, violence. Maybe individuals in the household have substance abuse problems. So let's just talk about isolation, violence, and substance abuse. If that's going on in your household, imagine the type of care that the child is getting. And when we talk about children exposure to violence, I tend to use myself as examples because I was adopted when I was younger due to my parents being alcoholics and drug addicts, and they were abusive to each other, right? So if just imagine, you may have seen children, or, you know, if you have children in school, you may have seen other kids that you just know have a distressed family life and they're not getting the proper care that they need, right? They're not receiving what your child or another client may be receiving. That's considered to be protective, right? For example, like I remember, like my dad, he dropped me off at DCFS, right? Because my mom disappeared and he couldn't go to work. And I remember them writing in my paperwork saying that when I was dropped off, how my underwear was dirty and filthy and things. So you can already see, yeah, girl, you had a distressed family life, right? You wasn't getting the proper care that you needed, right? Or let's talk about health impairment or economic concerns, right? So just imagine, this family that's distressed is living during COVID-19, and either mom or dad or both of them got dropped from their jobs, right? And now we got the kids staying home. You can't go to school either, right? And all of these things are just happening at once. Or interrupted opportunities and capacities to bond with the child, right? And it grinds my gears when people feel that the victim or survivor is you are just a horrible mother. You a horrible father, right? Or, this victim, the survivor, is dealing with so much. They are trying their best to stay safe and trying their best, the best way they know how to protect their child. And unfortunately, this might cause an interruption in the bonding and developmental growth that the child really needs to succeed. And then we're going to talk about protective factors, right? So we talked about the negative stuff, okay? Sorry to drop all them bombs on y'all, but I have to use that as an example. But let's talk about the protective factors, right? So culturally, you have multiple caregivers, right? Back in, we don't see that for real no more, but the whole saying, it takes a village to raise a family. Now people like, that's your child. They don't have nothing to do with me, right? But multiple caregivers, extended family, religious support, the church, or, whomever you believe in, right? You have that support culturally. Community, you got good schools, you got community service, you got resources, your child got extracurricular activities, it's funding at your schools, they got books that actually have pages, right? They have all of these things that helps them to be able to succeed. And as far as the family, right, you get the loving, consistent caregiving, economic stability, right? So I guess for, take me as an example, went from all these risk factors, right? And then being adopted into a more functional household, you get all of these protective factors, right? That can help really instill the necessary things that this child needs for developmental reasoning, success, and all of these different things. So these are definitely some different factors that you may see in your clients. Everybody may not have protective factors. Maybe it's a mixture of both. The school, I know my school really care about me, but at home is distressed, right? So imagine when these kids were not able to go to school, and school was probably the only way that they were eating. The school is the only way that they were getting attention, right? Because sometimes we see, they label them as bad kids, right? Because they come to school and they disruptive, or they hyper, or they talking, right? Hey, little Johnny might be at school acting that way because mom and dad don't even talk to him at home because they so worried or, mixed up in the things that they have going on that they don't have time for little Johnny. So what little Johnny gonna do? Little Johnny is gonna go to school while his friends at and his teachers, and he might act up just for Mrs. Hill to be able to talk to him and show him some attention. Maybe he like hearing his name get called out in the middle of everybody because people don't even identify him at home, right? So these are all different things that can really play a role in children's exposure to violence. So if it's a lot of violence going on in the household or the community, or I'm pregnant and, I'm being abused, right? Everything plays a role in the development of the child, right? So the brain system is designed to sense, perceive, process, store, and act on information received from external and internal environments. Threatening environments in early infancy can trigger imbalances of brain chemicals, which can affect how genes are expressed. Early experiences plus genes equal a biochemical foundation for a lifetime of intellectual, emotional, and social functioning. Right? So imagine all of the things, protective factors that I'm supposed to be receiving, and I wasn't, right? I'm 2-3 years old, knowing about violence, abuse, and struggle and neglect before even understanding that I'm being neglected, and how that might play a role as you are growing older. So impacts on young children 0 to 5, right? And keep this in mind because we're going to talk about safe from the start. Okay, so children are forced to learn about loss, death, and body functioning before they even have the cognitive structure to understand them. Okay, so it could be just examples like, I know I fear abandonment. I don't know why. I know that I think everybody is out here to hurt me, but I don't know why, right? Because a 2-year-old not going to understand why, okay? But I was adopted at, 5 years old, and I was very aware of everything that was going on, very aware. Loud noises could be distressing because young children take in information through their senses, right? So again, think about mom and dad and they're fighting and little Johnny trying to go to sleep, and maybe the lamp fell, but now he think the whole house on fire because he feel like something just happened in there and I got to see what it is, right? Them loud noises can be very startling. So children learn at an early age that the world is a dangerous and unpredictable place, which affects their natural curiosity about exploring and moving out into the world, right? Because maybe this child has such a strong attachment to the victim or survivor, right? They don't want to go nowhere. You can't even hug this little person without them clinging to mommy, right? You can't even conduct a counseling session without you hearing little Johnny outside the door screaming, crying, right? Because they want to be near the victim or survivor. So impacts on children. And maybe, and think about this if you do work with children, or if you know somebody that work with children, or maybe you have a family member like, oh, okay, this is making a little sense. I couldn't really put my finger on it, what was going on in the household, but now I see, right? Especially if this child was not showing any of these impacts before, right? So you have sleep difficulties. Some of these could be similar as the impacts on adults, right? But it's more to it, okay? So what else? You have separation anxiety, which we talked about, being very clingy to their parent that is being hurt or abused. Increased aggression. What else? Withdrawal, regression, intrusive thoughts, memories, and worries, right? There's different things. And we hear a lot of our counselors really talk about the fact that maybe in some clients you see bedwetting again. Sir, you're 7 years old and we were fine. We were, I know kids have slip-ups, but we were fine. And then all of a sudden this is happening again. You're not understanding why. But this can all have an impact on that child, okay? So these are some Illinois statistics. Some of these are not up to date, because, when finding statistics, especially on domestic violence, it'd be hard, but also too is because the reporting, right? The reporting is not up to par as all advocates will hope, right? So it says 1 in 5 children witnessed violence in their family or in the neighborhood in 2012. More than 1 in 3 said they had been emotionally bullied, while more than 13% being saying that they were physically bullied, right? And again, y'all see that stat I gave y'all, the 3.5 million children nationally aged 0 to 17 has experienced one or more types of childhood trauma. And it says 60% of adults in the United States report experiencing abuse or other difficult family circumstances during the childhood. And I want to say, we always talk about the fact that about 70% of abusers grew up in a household where there was abuse, right? So yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, child. We're going to use Chris Brown as an example. We're going to use our poster child as an example. So Chris Brown definitely stated in his documentary that he's seen violence in the household, right? And, Chris Brown actually just got let off on a case where a young lady said that he slapped her wig off her head. And he just got let off of that case. No charges, no nothing. So, typically, like I said before, the first relationship you see is in the household. So what you see is in the household is what you deem as normal. And, Chris Brown is an example of that. Okay. And I'm sure when you talk to some abusers, I'm sure Carrie used to work in our partner abuse intervention program, maybe talking with some of the perpetrators that's in our program. Once you, this is not no therapy session, right? But once you start really getting an understanding of your participants as well, you tend to see that a lot of them either went through abuse themselves, whether it be physically, whether it be sexually, or they experience mom or dad being abused in the household. Okay, so we're going to talk about Safe from the Start. Safe from the Start is a program at our job that we offer. One of our counselors, Kelly McLaughlin, she is the coordinator from this program, and she's awesome, right? So what is Safe from the Start, girl? You keep talking about this Safe from the Start. Okay, Safe from the Start provides services and education to help support children from birth to 5 years old who have been exposed to violence in the home or community, okay? So domestic violence is a qualifying experience, but other traumatic experiences and exposure to violence can also qualify that child for safe from the start. The family of the qualifying child can also receive services, right? So if you have, a 4-year-old that qualify for the services, but they have siblings or mom or dad, guess what? Y'all all getting the services, okay? So that's really cool and that's really awesome, because now everyone can get that sense of, healing and services that they need. Parenting classes are also giving to qualifying children caregiver. I also took the parenting class, due to a job requirement. I didn't even have my son at the time, but it was really eye-opening and really interesting as well. So that it's really good to have the Safe from the Start program because it really benefits a lot of families. So I've been talking a lot, y'all. I know y'all tired of me, or y'all probably behind the screen like, oh, yay, she ain't asked me no questions. But now I'm about to ask you a question. So if y'all want to take y'all stuff off mute, or if you like, I don't want to talk to you, but I will write it in the chat, that's fine too. But I want you to tell me some barriers to leaving. Why would a person stay in an abusive relationship? Even if you're taking a guess, right? And no, it's not because they're dumb, it's not because they're stupid, but what are some reasons?
I would say encountering a client that I'm currently working with right now is they're afraid of change. Even though them being in an abusive relationship, they know that it's not a good situation to be in, but it's something that they are familiar with. And because they're not used to being in an unabusive relationship, they actually are afraid of change.
That's a good one, because I think it's safe to say, even just as humans, change can be scary in general. So imagine being in an abusive relationship. And that makes sense because a lot of times when you are used to toxicness and abuse and hurt, when you get something good, it don't seem really familiar. And it puts you out of your element in a way, So I could definitely understand that as well. That was a great answer. Thank you. What else?
I see in your chat, Angie, that Hillary has shared financial instability can prevent folks from leaving.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of this, right? So fear is one of the main reasons, being very fearful. What is Carrie gonna do to me if I try to leave this abusive relationship? What's going to happen to my children? What's going to happen if I don't have any money, right? So come on now, let's talk about homelessness. If I don't have any money or the means to take care of myself or my family, right? It's not that easy. Everybody always want to give advice when they're not in the situation, telling you what you should or should not do, or, their favorite thing is, I wish I would, or this is what I would do, right? But let's think about it, okay? Let's say, I'm pregnant, okay? I'm not working. It's cold outside. It's snowing. My family and my friends don't talk to me because I've been isolated for the whole time I've been with my partner. And, they tired of telling me to leave. They tired of giving me the same advice. Maybe you on here, you tired of giving your friends the same advice too, right? Maybe, they keep telling me like, I'm done with this. I don't want to receive no phone call that you got, hospitalized or even worse, right? Where am I going to go? Am I going to do what's best for me and my children and stay where I have heat, water, food, a place comfortably that my children can sleep? Or am I going to take the risk to go be homeless? Or am I going to go stay in a shelter? But wait a minute, it's a pandemic. Staying in a shelter when it's a virus going on? Nah, that don't sound safe either. Right? So it's decisions that you have to make, right? And it's not easy. Or what about the availability of shelters? You know, I got dogs, you know, if you got pets, we love our pets, you know, we love them like family, you know. But there are more animal shelters in the United States than there is domestic violence shelters. Or think about it. If I'm a man, I'm an advocate at the job. And to be honest, I can't tell you one all men's domestic violence shelter. I can't. I'm not saying it's not one, right? I think I've heard of one maybe being in Boys Town, but I'm not going to give false information, right? But I can't tell you one like I can name different domestic violence agencies. I can't name one. So not knowing the resources, we've been around for 40 years. People still don't know that we located in Homewood or that we're here or that we're servicing people. A lot of people still don't even know that we're here, right? Which is, you know, kind of, you know, part of the reason we did some rebranding is because when people heard South Suburban Family Shelter, they thought we was a homeless shelter, not a domestic violence agency, right? The lack of support. If my family and friends not talking to me, if I don't have no resources, like, you know, maybe my friends and family don't even want me coming to stay with them because they scared of my abuser. A lot of time abusers will start coming after friends and family. All right, Miss Hill, tell Carrie to come home or I'm about to start hurting people. Right? And you will have family and friends that say you need to go back home. Or that's the mother of your child. That's the father of your child. What do you mean you're leaving them? You don't have no money. What you gonna do? You not living here with your 3 kids, right? So it's different things, family pressure, cultural, guilt and shame, right? I remember being in a training, I think it was a training, and I had gotten an example from someone that there was a first lady who came to the agency to get help. You know, she was married to the pastor, but the pastor was the one abusing her. And she instantly said, don't talk to me about leaving the pastor. I'm just here to talk to y'all, get some things off my chest, and I'm going back to my life. She didn't want to get the pastor in trouble. She didn't want to lose her church home. What was she going to do? Right? Love, 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 right? That person was not abusive on the first date. Honestly, a lot of times it don't happen to maybe years down the line. Maybe, you know, you are happy, you get married, you have your children. Oh, I got a new job, we're moving out of town. And that's when the abuse happens. Where are you going to go? We out of town. Your family is miles away. Good luck. There's a lot of different reasons, right? We talked about loving our pets, right? You think you think domestic violence shelters are going to be accepting pets? Ma'am, we have children and babies in here. We got people with allergies. We cannot accept your cats and dogs. That can't happen. But me being the victim or the survivor and me knowing if I leave, what might happen, I'm not going nowhere. Right? So there's a lot of different reasons and we can go on and on, but I'm not going to do that to y'all, right? We short on time. I'm not going to do that to y'all. However, there's a lot of different reasons and you may not understand, and that's okay. That's not your relationship. You don't have to understand, but it's really important to not pass judgment. Because, you know, as human beings, that's the first thing people want to do is pass judgment, right? So it's really important to just understand that your dynamic is not the same as mine. Okay. The most dangerous time for a person to leave is when they're pregnant, or essentially when they're trying to leave, they can get hurt, but especially when they're pregnant, because you would think that the perpetrator wouldn't do anything to harm the baby. No, 9 times out of 10, that stomach is being abused, which leads to unhealthy brain development or miscarriages or early term pregnancies. There's a lot that goes into that. And as advocates, We are most effective when we are trauma informed and actively avoid re-traumatizing and re-victimizing, right? So if I'm talking to you and Miss Carrie is my counselor, and she like, what? And you didn't leave? Girl, you crazy. I'm not coming to see Carrie no more. Nope, I'm not talking to you no more. And I'm probably not going to talk to nobody else. Okay. So you want to be very non-judgmental and be empathetic. There's a difference between sympathy and empathy. I may not be able to sympathize with you because I've never been through it. But as counselors, you have to put yourself in other people's shoes to try to understand. Okay. And communicate and educate on options and consequences in a clear manner and provide reliable referrals. We would hate for somebody to come out and lay all of it and we just look at them like, well, thanks for coming to talk to me, but I mean, I don't know what you should do. I don't know of any domestic violence agencies. Sorry. That was a waste of their time. Right? So remember that people impacted by domestic violence are the experts on their own lives. Our role is to support the survivor and help them stay safe, right? That's most important. And to educate them on resources and supports that are available to them. People do what they need to do in order to get their needs met. And that means staying safe by any means possible. And again, y'all, my name is Angela Davis, and I am a community educator at Anew, Building Beyond Violence and Abuse. That is my email. If y'all ever interested in any virtual or in-person presentations, please email me and let me know. And we would love to accommodate your needs. And that's all I have for you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Thanks very much. I just want to, in our last few minutes here, ask if anybody has questions or they want clarification on the foundation Angie has set for y'all today. And I was just going to give you a little bit of a roadmap for what to expect in the next several Fridays. So I'll start doing that, but just please either interrupt me by speaking up or type into the chat if you do need clarification on something. So in the next week's session, we're going to start taking a deeper dive into some of the identities and experiences that people may have that can increase risk of severity and frequency of violence. So when you were listening to Angela talk about, what kinds of systems of oppression exist, what kinds of experiences and identities might put somebody in a situation where they're dealing with both domestic violence and, for example, poor mental health, mental illness, homelessness, something like that. How do those things intersect that might put that person at a greater risk of domestic violence and also increase the lethality that Angela talked about there at the end? When somebody's leaving, that sort of thing, we see the risk of homicide go way up. So in the next two sessions, we're really going to be dipping into that and looking at that with like a closer lens. And then we'll be wrapping up our final session. We have 3 more with you all, and that final session will be looking at assessing, screening, and referring when you all are working with folks who are experiencing domestic violence, and how you can dovetail and partner with our agency so that we can help support folks with the domestic violence they're experiencing, while you all are helping them with the mental health concerns that you're there to help them with. So that's just a little roadmap. You'll definitely be hearing from me as a facilitator in some of those sessions, and you may see another few faces, but at a minimum, you'll have Angela and I as resources. So again, we just want to go deeper off that foundation that Angela set today. So let us know if you have any questions, and we encourage you to continue to think about what Angela has presented today in the context of folks that you've worked with in the past or maybe working with currently, because maybe you're seeing some issues that you want to raise with us during future sessions so that we can just kind of help unpack that with you. But otherwise, we really appreciate your time today, and we'll be following up with those PDF resources so you can have things to hand. But thanks very much. And Ladwina, if there's nothing left for us today, then we will finish out the recording and we'll be following up with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, everybody.